4 people from one family started a road trip through Death Valley, which is among America's most dangerous places. The temperature was over 115 degrees, and the land stretched endlessly, empty and deadly. They disappeared completely. There was no rescue, no clues, just a locked van and complete silence for 13 long years. Not one piece of evidence came to light until 2 hikers accidentally left the main path and discovered something that would solve everything. This isn't just another story about missing people. This is about the Death Valley Germans, a family whose dream holiday turned into a horror story that puzzled police for more than 10 years and showed how terrifying one wrong turn can be. On July 27, 1996, a green Plymouth van should have been given back to a car rental place in Los Angeles. Instead, it sat buried in sand in one of Death Valley's most isolated corners, with its passengers nowhere to be seen. What happened to Egbert Rimkus, his girlfriend Cornelia Meyer, and their 2 small children is still one of America's most frightening disappearances. Let me tell you what happened starting July 8, 1996, at Seattle Airport. 4 excited travelers from Dresden, Germany, got off their airplane and stepped into what they thought would be the greatest adventure of their lives. Egbert Rimkus, 34 years old, worked as an architect and had dreams too big for his small hometown. He had just gone through a bitter divorce and desperately needed this escape. With him was his 11-year-old son, George Weber. There was also Cornelia Meyer, called Connie by her friends, who was Egbert's 27-year-old girlfriend. And there was little Max Meyer, Connie's 4-year-old son. They had saved money for this trip, planned every small detail, and felt the excitement that comes with exploring a new place. From Seattle, they flew straight to Los Angeles, where they got their rental Cara Green 1996 Plymouth Voyager van. The family spent their first few days in Southern California, around San Clemente, enjoying the sunshine by the ocean and learning about this huge new country. But money was running short. During the trip, Rimkus called his bank in Germany, asking for $1,500 to be sent to them in California. He even faxed his ex-wife begging for more funds, but she refused to send anything. Before they entered the park on July 20, 1996, temperatures reached a burning 124 degrees. The road shimmered with heat waves, and the air itself felt like it was on fire. But they had done their homework, or so they believed. At the Furnace Creek Visitor Center, they bought 2 copies of the Death Valley National Monument Museum Guide in German. Instead of paying for expensive hotel rooms, they chose to sleep in their van that night in a place called Hanopa Canyon near Telescope Peak. The next morning, July 23rd, the family went out to explore. They visited different tourist spots, taking pictures with a camera. Police later checked the visitor book for the Warm Spring Mine site, which had an entry by the German group saying in German, "We are going over the pass," signed Connie, Egbert, George, Max. The pass they meant was probably Mengel Pass, a route that looked easy enough on their German maps but was actually an extremely dangerous path that only 4-wheel drive vehicles could handle. Their Plymouth van, built for city streets and highways, would have no chance on such rough ground. During their exploration, they also went to the geologist's cabin in Butte Valley, taking an American flag as a souvenir. This wasn't destruction of property but just tourists collecting memories, not understanding what they were really taking. As the day went on and the heat got worse, the family reached Mengel Pass only to find it completely impassable for their van. Standing in the blazing sun, they faced a terrible choice: turn back and lose precious hours retracing their steps, or try what looked like a shorter route down something called Anvil Canyon. "We can't go back now," Egbert likely said, sweat pouring down his face as he studied the map. "We'll lose the whole day." Their guidebook showed what appeared to be a road, but what they couldn't know was that this wasn't really a road at all, just a rough mining track abandoned for decades. And what they couldn't imagine was that this single, logical decision would make them vanish so completely they would become one of America's most puzzling missing person cases. By the end of July 23rd, 1996, the German family was stuck in one of the most remote and hostile places on Earth, with no way to call for help and no real chance of being rescued. Their vacation had become a fight to stay alive. The family had airplane tickets from Los Angeles back to Germany on July 27, 1996, but there was no proof that they got on the plane or left the United States. Rimkes's ex-wife, Heiko Weber, got worried when her ex-husband and son didn't come home from their vacation, and she started asking questions about where they were. "Where are they?" she kept asking German officials. "Something is wrong." German officials contacted their American partners, but with no crime scene, no witnesses, and no clear authority to handle the case, it fell through the cracks. October 21st, 1996. Almost 3 months after the German family disappeared, Death Valley National Park Ranger Dave Briner was doing routine watching from a helicopter, looking for illegal drug labs. In Anvil Canyon, about 2.4 miles down from Willow Spring, sat a vehicle that didn't belong there. When the helicopter landed, Briner walked carefully toward the vehicle. The 1996 Plymouth Voyager with California license plates was locked tight. 3 of its tires were completely flat, and the sand around it showed clear signs that someone had tried desperately to drive it out. The axles were buried deep in sand, and it was obvious the van had been there for a long time. But where were the people? When police checked the license plates, the van had been reported stolen and belonged to Dollar Car Rental, rented to 4 German tourists on July 8th. What investigators found inside the van painted a picture of a family vacation that had gone terribly wrong. The van had everything you'd expect from tourists: suitcases, clothes, children's toys, camera equipment, and several rolls of film. There were bottles of beer and whiskey, sleeping bags, and camping gear. Most importantly, there was one of the German guidebooks bought at the Furnace Creek Visitor Center. The American flag taken from the geologist's cabin in Butte Valley proved they had visited that remote place. Food wrappers and evidence of human waste near the van suggested they had spent at least one night at this spot. The largest search and rescue operation in Death Valley's history was launched immediately. Around 250 people took part in the search, including multiple rescue teams, horses, and helicopters. They searched for 4 days across the harsh desert landscape. On the first day, searchers found a Budweiser beer bottle about 1.7 miles east of the van, half buried in sand next to a small bush. Next to the bottle, someone had cleared a spot in the dirt proof that someone had sat there for a long time. The bottle matched those found in the van, but this single clue only made the mystery deeper. After 4 days with no other discoveries, the official search was stopped. "We searched smartly and focused on the most likely areas," a spokesperson said, but still there was no sign of the missing German family. For years, wild theories circulated about what had happened. Some suggested government conspiracies, others believed the family had faked their own disappearance. But none of these theories led anywhere, and the case was filed away as an unsolved mystery. Tom Mahood was not a professional investigator. He was a search and rescue worker with Los Angeles County. In 2009, 13 years after the German family disappeared, he read about their case and couldn't let it go. Something about this didn't add up, he later said. Everyone had been searching in the wrong places. What struck Mahood wasn't just the tragedy of 4 people vanishing without a trace. It was the logical problems in how the case had been handled. Mahood theorized that everyone had been searching in the wrong places. Using the German guidebook found in the van, he traced the route the family most likely intended to take. The booklet showed a path west through Butte Valley and Mengel Pass, past the infamous Barker Ranch where Charles Manson's followers had once hidden. then north to the ghost town of Ballarat, and on toward Yosemite National Park. The family's movements suddenly made sense when viewed this way. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. They had left their camping spot in Hunaupa Canyon on the morning of July 23rd and driven south to Warm Spring Road, turning west. At the Warm Spring camp, they probably stopped hoping to find someone who could tell them about road conditions ahead. Instead, they found only an empty mining camp, so they signed the register and continued west. When they reached the geologist cabin in Butte Valley, they again hoped to find someone who could help them. Finding it empty, they took the American flag as a souvenir and kept going to Mengle Pass. But Mengle Pass proved impossible for their van. The guidebook offered what looked like another route, a road down Anvil Canyon that seemed to lead back to the main valley. Faced with the choice of turning back or trying the shorter route, they chose the latter. Mahood's analysis was different from official searchers in one important way. He believed the family had headed south from their stuck van, not east or north as others had assumed. While traditional search and rescue thinking suggested that lost people would try to return to their last known safe location, Mahood theorized that Egbert Rimkus would have looked at his maps and seen the northern boundary of the China Lake Naval Weapons Center only 8 or 9 miles to the south. To a desperate man trying to save his family, a military base would have seemed like salvation. Surely there would be people there, Mahood reasoned. Water, radio communications, and the ability to call for help. Mahood believed the family had spent at least one night at the van, then locked the vehicle and headed east down Anvil Canyon to the point where the beer bottle was found. From there, they had turned south toward what they hoped would be rescue at the China Lake facility. But this was a route no one had searched thoroughly. Official searchers had dismissed the possibility, reasoning that experienced desert travelers would never head south into such forbidding terrain. But the Germans weren't experienced desert travelers. They were tourists with incomplete maps and a desperate need to save their children. "We're going to find them," Mahood told his partner Les Walker as they prepared for their search in 2009, 13 years after the family's disappearance. Together, they began exploring the rugged, empty terrain southeast of Goler Wash, about 8 miles from the abandoned van and 4 miles from the China Lake boundary fence. On November 12, 2009, Tom Mahood and Les Walker found Cornelia Myers' remains scattered across about 150 meters of desert floor, evidence of her final, desperate struggle against the merciless heat. Her passport and bank identification with a photograph confirmed who she was. Les found a toothbrush and a tube of some sort of cream in a small side wash to the northwest. They found remains of a small shoe that could have been a woman's shoe or that of a child. A portion of Cornelia's daily planner was found with many business cards from places the Germans had stayed on their trip. Besides a 2-liter wine bottle, they also found a clear bottle about 70 feet downstream. This was later identified as one of the Budweiser bottles from the van. "Tom, we have some bones here," Walker radioed during their search. Over the following days, they also found the remains of Egbert Rimkus. The location was exactly where Mahood's theory had predicted, in terrain so rugged and remote that it's no wonder previous searches had missed it. The family had indeed headed south from their stuck van, walking through the scorching desert toward what they believed would be salvation at the China Lake military facility. But when they finally reached the hills overlooking the base, there was no salvation, waiting only an empty bombing range stretching endlessly under the merciless sun. They had died believing rescue was just over the next ridge, never knowing they were walking deeper into one of America's most desolate wastelands. The discovery put an end to 13 years of guessing and conspiracy theories. There had been no government cover-up, no faked disappearance, and no complicated deception. 4 people had simply made a series of logical decisions that led them into a death trap from which there was no escape. Later searches found additional remains, though there wasn't enough DNA evidence to positively identify them as belonging to the two children. But the mystery of what happened to the Death Valley Germans had finally been solved. The story of the Death Valley Germans is ultimately a tragedy of good intentions and bad information. A family who should have lived long, full lives instead became victims of circumstances they couldn't have expected and dangers they couldn't have understood. Egbert Rimkus was trying to show his son and his girlfriend's child the wonders of America. Cornelia Meyer was embracing adventure with a man she loved. 11-year-old George was experiencing the world beyond his small German city. 4-year-old Max was simply along for the ride, trusting the adults to keep him safe. When their vacation became a nightmare, they made decisions that seemed logical at the time. They tried to find another route when their first choice proved impossible. They attempted to reach what they believed was safety when their vehicle became stuck. They walked toward what appeared on their maps to be a place where help could be found. Each decision made sense by itself. Together, they led to tragedy. But the real heroes of this story are Tom Mahood and Les Walker, who refused to give up. Their dedication brought closure to families who had waited more than a decade for answers. The mystery that had haunted the German families in Dresden for 13 years was finally solved. "We had to do this on our own," Mahood said later. "The official search teams had given up, but we couldn't." In just a few hours, he and Walker had accomplished what 250 professional searchers couldn't do in years. Their success where professionals had failed demonstrates the power of persistence and fresh thinking in solving cold cases. Back in Germany, Egbert's mother, Ursula Rimkus, had refused to give up hope for 13 long years. Unlike other family members who had declared their loved ones dead, she kept waiting, believing somehow her son and grandson would return. "They're still out there somewhere," she would tell friends. Finally, she could lay them to rest. The Death Valley Germans have become part of American folklore, their story told and retold as both a warning tale and a testament to the power of hope. Their tragedy reminds us that every missing person case represents real people with real families who deserve answers, no matter how long it takes to find them. The desert had kept this secret for 13 years, but it was finally told. Did you enjoy this story? If your car broke down in the desert with your family, would you stay with the vehicle and wait, or walk toward what looks like help on your map? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Stay with the car. Wait for rescue. Thanks so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.